I followed my mom that night. Quiet, staying in the shadows like a spy in my own village. She thought I was asleep, but something inside me, something sharp and aching, wouldn't let me rest. That moment destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. For 3 weeks, she had been leaving our house every evening. She always used the same excuse. "I'm just running some errands, Patrick. I'll be back soon." But those errands that lasted until dawn weren't normal errands. When she finally came home, something was different about her. I was 10 years old, and I started to understand what adults meant when they talked about worry eating you alive. It's this terrible feeling that grows inside you, making everything hurt. 3 weeks of watching my mom change. 3 weeks of sitting alone in our dark house, wondering where she really went. 3 weeks of promises she never kept. So when that phone rang again and she started getting ready for another night of errands, I decided I needed to know the truth. My name is Patrick, and I was 10 years old the summer everything fell apart. I lived in a small Polish village with my mother. It was beautiful. Rolling hills, a crystal clear lake, and railway tracks that cut through our world. Tourists came here for summer vacations with their families, then disappeared back to their real lives when autumn arrived. But for me, this wasn't a vacation destination. This was my entire universe. My father worked far away. It was just my mother and me, day after day. I didn't mind. I had never known anything different. My mother was my best friend, my playmate, my whole world. Every morning, we would race the train that passed through our village, running alongside the tracks, our laughter mixing with the sound of wheels on steel. We would cycle through the countryside. We would swim in the lake, the cold water making us feel alive. Those were the golden days, when I believed the world began and ended with my mother's smile. But summer changed everything. When the warm weather arrived, so did the families, mothers and fathers with their children. For the first time, I began to understand what I was missing. I tried to make friends with the other children, but I was like a wild animal trying to join a domesticated pack. I had never learned how to talk to kids my age. I was 10 years old, and I felt ancient. That's when the phone calls started. Every evening, my mother's phone would ring. She would answer with a voice I had never heard before. Softer, more musical, filled with promises that were never meant for me. "I have to go out tonight, Patrick," she would say, already moving toward her bedroom to change clothes. "I'll be back soon." But soon stretched like elastic, sometimes snapping back before midnight, sometimes never returning until dawn. I would lie awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that the hollow feeling in my chest was just hunger. During the day, she would make promises about spending time together. "Tomorrow," she would say, her eyes already distant. "Tomorrow, we'll have the whole day together." Tomorrow became a cruel joke that never arrived. I began to feel like I was becoming invisible to the one person who was supposed to see me most clearly. The anxiety crept in slowly at first, then all at once. It flooded everything. Just when I thought I might drown in my loneliness, salvation appeared. A girl about my age came to stay at one of the vacation cottages near our house. Her name was Micah. Unlike the other tourist children who treated me like a curious local artifact, Micah actually talked to me. She told me about her parents' divorce, about how she understood what it felt like to be caught between two worlds. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. We began to spend our days together, doing all the activities I used to do with my mother. We cycled, swam in the lake, and sat by the water talking. She filled the space my mother had left, and slowly, the constant ache in my chest began to ease. But I couldn't stop watching my mother's nightly disappearances with growing anger. One evening, I followed her. I kept to the shadows until I saw her meet a man I didn't recognize. They embraced with the kind of familiarity that made my stomach twist into knots. This wasn't just friendship. This was something that had been building for weeks while I sat at home believing her promises. On my way back home, I encountered a young deer wandering alone on the road. It was separated from its herd, lost and vulnerable. I stared at that little deer and saw my own reflection, abandoned, confused, trying to navigate a world that no longer made sense. The next morning, a woman appeared at our door while my mother was out. She was older, crying, asking for my mother by name. I realized this was the wife of the man my mother had been meeting in secret. I gave her some water and tried to comfort her, but what do you say to someone whose world is crumbling because of choices your mother made? That evening, my father called from his distant job. After my mother hung up, she caught my eye. "Patrick," she said, "you can't tell your father about my evening walks. It's our secret, okay? Promise me." I promised because I desperately wanted my mother's love, and she was offering me a chance to be important to her again, even if it meant becoming part of her lies. But promises like that are poison. They change you in ways you don't understand until it's too late. My mother's behavior became more erratic. She would snap at me for tiny things. One evening, I accidentally spilled juice on her dress when she was getting ready to leave. She exploded with fury, screaming at me as if I had deliberately sabotaged her entire life. In that moment, I saw something in her eyes that terrified me, a complete absence of the mother I had known. My friendship with Micah became my lifeline. We spent every day together, and I began to feel like maybe I could survive this summer. But then the older boys arrived. There was a group of teenage boys who had been bothering Micah. I was too small to protect her, but I knew enough to be afraid for her. One night, while following my mother again, I saw Micah with one of those boys by the lake. Even from a distance, I could tell something was wrong. She looked frightened. The next morning, I found Micah in tears. When I asked what had happened, she couldn't speak. Her silence told me everything, and something protective erupted inside me. I ran to find the boy who had hurt her and attacked him with all my fury. Of course, I was no match for someone twice my size. He threw me to the ground easily, but I didn't care about winning. I just needed to hit something. When Micah tried to explain later that relationships are complicated, I felt the last piece of my childhood shatter. Even she was choosing someone else over me. I said terrible things to her, words designed to hurt as much as I was hurting. I watched her face crumble, and she walked away from me forever. Now I was truly alone. My mother's affair eventually came to its end. Her boyfriend chose his family over her, leaving my mother devastated and confused. For a few days, she was present again, available in the way I had been desperately craving. I took care of her, brought her tea, and felt a bitter triumph that her pain had finally brought her back to me. Then my father came home unexpectedly for a visit. He brought gifts and promises about spending real time together as a family. For a brief moment, I believed maybe everything could go back to the way it was before. But secrets have a way of refusing to stay buried. During a casual conversation, my father asked me directly if my mother had been going out at night while he was away. I kept my promise to her. I lied to my father's face and told him nothing unusual had happened. The next day, the other woman returned. This time, my mother wasn't there to stop her. This time, she spoke directly to my father. I found him in the bathroom afterward, sitting on the floor and crying like a broken man. In that moment, I understood that some betrayals destroy not just relationships, but the very foundation of who we thought we were. He left that same day. I didn't know it then, but I would never see him again. Summer vacation was ending. All the tourist families packed up and returned to their real lives, leaving our village empty. On the morning I was supposed to start school, my mother walked me partway there. We barely spoke, Our words were polite and careful, like strangers trying not to offend each other. As we approached the railway crossing, where I had spent so many happy mornings racing trains with her, I found myself lagging behind. She walked ahead, lost in her own thoughts, and I realized I had become invisible to her again. The train was coming. She was on one side of the tracks, I was on the other. And between us was this massive, thundering machine that seemed to symbolize everything that had gone wrong between us. For a terrifying moment, I thought about just standing there, letting the train solve all of my problems. But then she turned around and saw me, saw the danger, saw her son standing alone and broken while she had been walking away. Something in her face changed. For the first time in months, she really saw me, not as an obstacle or a burden, but as her child who needed her. She started running back toward me, tears streaming down her face, and I realized that maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. The train passed, leaving us standing on opposite sides of the tracks, but somehow closer than we had been in months. My mother held me tight, and I could feel her shaking. We didn't talk about what would happen next. We didn't make promises we might not be able to keep. But in that moment, I understood something important about love and forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. Summer was over, but maybe that was okay. Maybe some seasons have to end completely before new ones can begin. I started school that day as a different person. I was no longer the innocent child who believed that love was simple and permanent. But I wasn't broken either. I was changed, but still capable of hope. My mother was different too. The affair had ended, my father was gone, and she was left to figure out how to rebuild a life shattered by her own choices. But in choosing to run back to me at that railway crossing, she had chosen what mattered most. Some summers teach you about friendship and adventure. This summer taught me about the complex landscape of human hearts, about the ways people can hurt each other even when they love each other, and about the possibility that even the most damaged relationships can be repaired. The tracks are still there, cutting through our village like a promise that there are always other places to go. That's the summer I learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other again and again, even after everything goes wrong, especially then.